We are here in Flippin Live. It is day 24 of our live show during quarantine, and it is a little after 7 a.m. on Tuesday, May 26, 2020. I'm Andrew from 510 Books, and I want to talk about the difference between doing FBA and merchant fulfilled. So let's jump right into it.
Flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live. We're gonna strive, we're here to learn and gonna earn. Flippin' live.
This is our theme song for the show, and I'm going to launch into the topic of the day. It's our original theme song. Hope you enjoy it. Again, my name is Andrew from 510 Books, and we go live every morning. Have been going live for over 3 weeks now, and today I'm going to focus on the difference between FBA and fulfilled by fulfilled by merchant, which is called FBM. So FBA versus merchant fulfilled, and what are the advantages? Talk about the advantages and disadvantages of both, things to consider, things to weigh when you're starting out, and deciding which one makes more sense to you. And I'm talking specifically about reselling books. You can resell all types of stuff on Amazon, but I'm going to talk about books because that's what I started with and what I continue to sell in addition to other types of media. And I want to say good morning to everybody watching live, and hello to everybody who will watch this into the future. So let's get started with FBA. So FBA stands for Fulfilled by Amazon, and FBM is Fulfilled by Merchant. There are some other ways to refer to it. A lot of people just refer to it as MF for Merchant Fulfilled. Merchant being you, the seller, the person who has listed the items. In this case, books, has listed the books for sale on Amazon, and therefore you are responsible for them once they sell to ship and whatnot. And Fulfilled by Amazon means that you have already bought the books, but you ship them to an Amazon warehouse. I'm sure you've seen photos or videos of Amazon warehouses and heard of them around the country and in most states. And it means that Amazon handles logistics. So you ship it in and then they take it from there, basically. So I want to talk about both, and then at the end of that, talk about what I would recommend. Everyone's situation is different. You have to weigh the advantages and disadvantages of each, but tell you what I did and then what I recommend. So first off, let's talk about advantages of FBA, or Fulfilled by Amazon. Just like it says, Amazon fulfills your orders. Of course, both Fulfilled by Amazon, FBA, and FBM, or Merchant Fulfilled, utilize Amazon.com and their website as the platform to sell your used books. And let's just jump right into, there's a few advantages. So I'll go over the advantages first, and then I'll go into the disadvantages for FBA. So number one, Amazon stores your books. So this is one of the biggest reasons why people decide to sell on or through the FBA program on Amazon, whether it's books or other types of items, is you essentially are leveraging the infrastructure and the real estate that Amazon has built out over the years and has rolled out. This program, FBA, started back in 2007, so here we are 13 years later. Before that, everybody, all resellers on Amazon since the 90s had to fulfill the orders themselves. So before 2007, they had to do it themselves. And starting then, I started in 2014, so 7 years after FBA was rolled out. But that's one of the big advantages is Amazon stores your books. They store your items. So you essentially will ship those into Amazon. Less than a 50-pound box. You can send in multiple boxes, but without getting into too much detail, essentially you list the items and then you put stickers on them, and then you'll send them in to Amazon in one box, or sometimes multiple boxes if you're sending in a lot at a time and you have to break those down. But anyway, once you ship those in, Amazon receives them like any other shipment, right? Through UPS. You have to use UPS. Typically, most people use UPS unless they're doing giant pallets, but that's a whole nother level of reselling. But as an individual reseller, smaller seller, one person operation, you're going to send in books in a box, and then they will receive them, open the box, and each book will have an individual SKU number that will be a sticker that you will have placed on there, and then they will scan them and they will store them. They will take care of logistics essentially. So they will store your books in a giant warehouse. At the end of the video, well, maybe if we have time, I'll show you some photos of Amazon warehouses. They're essentially cavernous warehouses. They look like giant football stadiums inside, and basically they'll store your books for as long as it takes to sell them, or until you decide to get rid of them. So that's a huge advantage that you can utilize with FBA, and I'll kind of go over these as I bring all this out and kind of tie them together. Number 2 is Amazon ships your items. So you send them in, they will receive your items, your books, and then they will put them on shelves based upon the system that Amazon has set up. And then when those items sell, when those books sell, which is the point, right? When those books sell, they will then pluck them. They'll have people designated to go around taking the items out of the bins and shelves and however they have them organized. And they will pluck those out and then go over to the people that actually do the shipping, and then they will fulfill them, meaning they will drop them in an envelope, some sort of envelope with wow, I'm blanking. Anyway, they will put them in an envelope and ship them out. That's it. It's that simple, right? They'll store your items, store your books, and they will ship them. So not something that you have to handle. Another thing that never did advantage for doing FBA is that Amazon handles returns and refunds and general customer service. So if somebody wants to return an item, and we know that FBA, which I didn't mention in the beginning, but is essentially you will have Prime offers. So all of the tens of millions of Prime customers on Amazon will see that little Prime logo next to your item for sale, versus the fulfilled by merchant offerings or listings will not say that. And if they're a Prime member, that means they will get free shipping. You typically 2-day free shipping. And a lot of times they will choose that offer over the other offers. Not always, but a lot of times. And so then they have hassle-free returns essentially. So Amazon will handle all of those returns, any refunds, and any general customer service that people have or issues that people have. So if people are complaining about it's taking more than 2 days, or they think it should be faster, or whatever the issues are, then Amazon's going to deal with that by and large. So you don't have to. You can just kind of turn it off, or you turn off your worry about that side of the business, because they will deal with it. So they'll store your books, ship your books, and deal with customer service. Another advantage is they have a huge storage capacity. Like I said, there's many warehouses, Amazon warehouses across the country. I don't remember exactly how many. I believe, well, there's dozens for sure. There might be like 70, 80. I can't remember exactly how many there are presently. They often are building new ones, but what essentially that means is you're able to leverage those huge warehouses, those huge storage capacity that Amazon builds out to build up your inventory. When you first start, you might start with only sending in 40 books here, 20 books there. But if you want to start big and you want to send in 100 to 100 books a week, and let's say 500, 800, 1,000 books a month, let's just say, on a bigger level, even an individual, you want to go big, you can do that. Now, when you first start, I believe there is a storage limit, and then you have to show that you're selling the items and other types of things. They've recently changed that, not as in the last few months, but in the last few years, they changed that. When I first started, you had a huge amount of capacity, then you had to they kind of gifted you more. But there is potential for a huge storage capacity where you could store thousands of books in this instance in Amazon warehouses, and they will handle all of that and ship the items. And so you don't have to worry about having a huge warehouse yourself. You can utilize Amazon's warehouse space. Of course, they charge you for that, which I'll get into. But yeah, essentially, if you want to build a big business, even by yourself, or even hiring somebody to help you, or working with somebody, and you want to have 5,000 books in your Amazon FBA inventory, you can do that. You can grow essentially as big as you want with this type of storage capacity that Amazon offers. So that's a big advantage as well, especially if you want to go bigger on Amazon. Number 5, the fifth advantage would be the prime bump. Now, some people will say, well, okay, so essentially what this means is that there's a bit more of a premium on the items that you sell FBA or prime offers versus the FBM or merchant fulfilled offers, that people are willing to pay more for the convenience of getting it shipped to them within 2 days for free. So they're willing to, instead of pay $6 for a book, they might pay $10 or $11, just as a simple example. On a higher priced book, on a $20 prime book, the merchant fulfilled offers might be $12, and then prime might be $18, $20. So it varies, of course, and sometimes there's not much of a difference, but a lot of times there is enough times to where it makes sense for people to utilize that, or to take advantage of that prime bump for books and for other types of media and items in general. This is something that is hotly debated, and how big that prime bump is. But in my experience over the past nearly 6 years, that premium has pretty consistently been there and continues to be there till today, because I continue to ship into Amazon books and other media, and I'm able to charge higher prices than the fulfilled by Amazon prices. Or sorry, fulfilled by merchant prices, the merchant fulfilled prices in general, of course. There's other factors that come into play, and sometimes the prices can go down a lot with FBA or prime offers. But in general, there is a prime bump. Number 6, Amazon offers inexpensive disposals or returns of your books. Right? Like any other business, you want to sell your items, right? If you're in retail, you want your items to sell on the shelves. Well, this is essentially online retail. So the shelves are Amazon, and your items are your books in this example. However, all your books are not going to sell. That's just the reality. Even the better that you get, the longer that I've been doing it, almost 6 years now, there's still books and items that I will send in, and 3, 4, 5 months later, they still haven't sold. For a host of reasons. The demand might have gone down. That particular product has been flooded for whatever reason with other copies. And so therefore, there's a lot of other FBA sellers fighting for the next sale. So, excuse me. So there's a lot of reasons. Those are a couple. But basically, things happen, and also there's a learning curve. So maybe you send in some items, some books initially that maybe weren't the best to send in, and they haven't sold. And so you want to get rid of those, so you stop paying the monthly storage fees for them, and then potentially, which I'll talk about, other long-term storage fees. So Amazon offers inexpensive disposal. So there's 2 options. You can either have the item disposed of by Amazon for 15 cents. That's 15 cents, where they will just make it disappear. They essentially will take possession of it, and then it's in their world and they can do what they want with it. Or they will return it to you for 50 cents, as in 50, half a dollar, 50 cents back to you. Now, it's up to you, right? But you have that option. So you're going to have to get rid of it eventually. You're either going to have to sell it, or you're going to have to get it disposed of or returned to you, because it can't be there indefinitely. I mean, it can, but you're going to have to keep paying for it, and it doesn't make sense. So the great thing about it is you can also set up a trigger to where none of your items go past a year, and then they're automatically disposed of. So there's a lot of systems in place that you can utilize to make that whole process automatic. So that's a big advantage as well, and you will learn it as you grow. If you're newer, or if you've even been doing it for a few years, your inventory will grow. It'll fluctuate, but if it grows significantly, there's going to be a certain percentage of your inventory that will not sell, like I said, for a variety of reasons, and you're going to want to get rid of it. And you can get rid of 100 items for 15 cents a pop, which is only $15, which is really inexpensive. But you might want to send some of them back to you because you feel that you could put them list them as merchant fulfilled, or you can list them on eBay or sell them locally, that type of thing. Then it might make sense for 50 cents because you already spent the money to buy the item, source it, and then 50 more cents to have it sent back to you. But if you can still turn around and make $5 off of it, whatever, you have to calculate that, but you have that option. The last advantage is less time spent on logistics, more on sourcing, right? So essentially what I mean is basically a big chunk of your business when you do FBA is sort of passive to you, is something that you don't have to worry about, which is the huge advantage of doing FBA. So the logistics are handled by Amazon. Like I said on the first couple of advantages, right? They handle storing, the storage of your books, they handle the shipment of your books, and they handle all the general customer service. So you don't have to hassle and worry about that. You can continue to source more books to send in for them to deal with and sell. So basically, you should be spending most of your time sourcing, and essentially sourcing is just finding new books to list and then ship into Amazon, and less time on dealing with anything else. Basically, after you ship your items, you just have to deal with repricing your items, which you can either do manually or automatically with repricers, which I won't get into now. But so repricing, and then also removals, right, or disposals of your items. Those are the two big ones. Occasionally, a customer will reach out to you, will have a question. You might have to deal with them, but usually you can refer them to Amazon, unless it's something else about the product being damaged or something wrong with it, or it's the wrong product or something like that. But by and large, there's not too much you have to do, because Amazon will handle a lot of it. So those are the 7 advantages that I feel are the most important for FBA. There's some others that veteran sellers can probably come up with or can think of that are also important, but those are the big ones. They store your books. Amazon ships your items. They handle customer service. They have a huge storage capacity. The Prime Bump is there, where you can sell your books potentially for more money. They offer inexpensive disposals, returns, and you have to spend less time on the business, on the logistics side of the business, and more time on sourcing, because the money's made when you make a sale, but the money, the building of inventory, is when you're sourcing. The better you get at sourcing, the more time you spend at sourcing and finding more books to resell, the more money you make. Okay, so now let's go through the disadvantages of FBA. Are there disadvantages? Well, of course. I would never come on here and make a video and say it's all rosy for FBA. It's the most amazing program out there, and it is awesome, but there's always disadvantages. So there's a few disadvantages that I think are the biggest to consider. First one is higher fees than merchant fulfilled. So there are storage fees. Let me slide over a little bit here. There's monthly and long-term storage fees, as well as fulfillment fees. So essentially, what that means is when you have an inventory of books, let's say in Amazon warehouses, Amazon charges you. They're not going to let you store them for free. They're going to charge you a monthly amount based on the size, the dimensions, and the weight of the item. And that will be charged once a month, and it'll be for the entire inventory. So they'll break it down by item, but essentially it's the amount of space it's taking up. And actually, I don't think it's weight. Sorry, it's the amount of space, and they'll charge you that per month. It's very minuscule. It comes down to a couple pennies a book, essentially. It's very small. So if you have 1,000 books, it's not going to be very much money. It's not much. However, it does exist, and you have to take that into consideration. The larger inventory grows, and you have to make sure you have enough profit in each item to warrant those books sitting there for months, or hopefully not, up to a year. And also there's something called long-term storage fee, or LTSF for short. You might see that online in some of the forums and whatnot. And essentially what that is that's a storage fee. There's a long history with it, but what it is right now, currently in 2020, in May of 2020, is that it says that if your items hit 12 months or 365 days, 12 months in an Amazon warehouse in their storage, there's another new fee that pops up in that first month, and then that fee is applied every month, and that's a higher fee. And then also there's fulfillment fees. So every time your item is sold, there are certain set fees, certain dollar amounts, and then there's a variable fee based upon the weight. But there is a percentage of your each sale that is taken out for fulfillment fees as well. But that's why, because of the prime bump, you're still able to make good profit off the items. And with the free Amazon seller app, or with Scoutly or Scout IQ or any of the other paid scouting or sourcing apps, third-party sourcing apps, you can see exactly what each item is going to make for you based on all the different fees. They even factor in storage fees as well. So you'll be able to see that really quickly, especially with the paid apps, to decide whether an item is worth sending in. So that's a potential disadvantage. Although, of course, with the fulfillment fees, you get all of those advantages of Amazon storing, shipping, and your items, and dealing with customer service. So it's a give and take. Number 2 is inbound shipping cost. So when you are selling on Amazon FBA, when you first start out, Filled by Amazon, you need to. The whole point is to not deal with shipping and logistics and storing. So you need to ship those items in, and guess what? It's not free to ship your books in to an Amazon warehouse. So this is another cost that you have to consider when you're first starting. Once you're going and you've been doing it for months and of course years, it's not a big deal because you're already making money. The money you're making will pay for the inbound shipping cost. And the cost generally is not huge, but it is something to consider, especially when you're newer, and especially if you're on a limited budget and you don't have that much money to put into it. And it varies. Like anything else, it depends on how far the books are being shipped, how heavy the box is. So you can ship no more than a box, or a box cannot be heavier than 50 pounds when you send it into an Amazon warehouse. But if it goes up to 50 pounds worth of books, if it's in the same state, it's going to be cheaper than if it's 5 states over or going across the coast. Typically, my inbound shipments have been going to a warehouse that is in California. I'm in Southern California, that is in California, and not only in California, but really close. It's like an hour and a half drive from where I live. So my inbound shipping costs are pretty low. However, sometimes I've had to go all the way to New Jersey, all the way to Virginia, across the country, and that's going to be more expensive. It's not going to be outrageous because Amazon offers deeply discounted shipping costs through UPS. However, if you are if you don't have that much money, you have to consider that. So you spend $50 on 50 books, let's say, and then you're shipping those 50 books in. It's under 50 pounds in one box, but you have to go across the country and you're gonna have to spend $15. Well, consider that, right? Ideally, your books will sell for great profit and you won't have a problem covering it. But just consider it. That is something to consider. And number 3 is that potentially you will get split shipments, and this adds to the cost of inbound shipping. I have not been getting split shipments. During the quarantine, the beginning of the quarantine, in March and April, I did get in April I got a split shipment, but the last one I did a few weeks ago, the shipment was not split. So some people get them more often than others, and there's a variety of reasons. Some of them we don't know about, and some of them we kind of have an idea because Amazon might want these books over here in this region and these books over here, et cetera, et cetera. So there's various reasons, but sometimes what happens is you have, let's say, 50 items, and they'll split 10 to this warehouse, 20 to this warehouse, 30 to that, or 20 to this warehouse. And so you'll have to do 3 separate boxes and pay for those separately, which means the cost of inbound shipping will go up. And that happened several years ago, so much to some people that they quit doing FBA and started just doing merchant fulfilled, or FBM. From what I've heard, generally that's not happening on a huge scale, but it can happen. So, and it depends on where you live. So you have to test that out. That's another potential disadvantage. Number 4 is lost or damaged books or items. So once the items are out of your control or out of your possession, things can happen, right? There's a lot of people that touch your stuff. So I go to the UPS, I drop it off. UPS usually is pretty good in my experience with not damaging things, but something could be damaged during the shipping process from your house to an Amazon warehouse. But more likely that once that box is open, if you got 50 books, different people are touching your stuff, Amazon employees, and things can just happen. Things can be lost. I've had this happen, or damaged to the point to where Amazon says we can't sell it. What happens then? Well, they will reimburse you. That's a whole other conversation where Amazon sometimes will reimburse you very small amount of money, and you have to dispute that and try to get more money for it. But that can happen, and that's happened to me many times over the past 6 years. And veterans can attest to that Amazon is notorious for losing or damaging your items in the warehouse. And sometimes too, and also you will notice this too, if you get items returned to you, it'll come back in a very different condition than you sent it in. You sent it in, it was in a solid, good, or very good condition, and you get it back, and if it's a book, it's all bent, it looks like it was stomped on. It doesn't always happen, but it does happen, especially with CDs too. Sometimes the cases are cracked. So sometimes you'll send in an item that's in great condition, and then it'll be shipped out to a customer and they will complain about it. But you know that when you sent it in, it was in great condition. And so that's a bit of a disadvantage. And Amazon can blame you sometimes as the seller and ding your account, because they will say, well, you claim that it was sent in one condition, but then they got it in a different condition. So that's a potential disadvantage as well. And I see guys commenting here, just talking to live people. I will get to your comments at the end and we can talk about them. Hopefully you stick around so you can still participate with that. Disadvantage number 5 is higher return rate. So what that means is, because of the advantages of Amazon offering of your listings being prime, and because of the ease with which Amazon offers free returns, hassle-free returns, people, prime buyers, are more likely to take advantage of that and return an item if it's something they don't like about it. They don't want it, they don't like it, whatever random reason, or they damage it themselves. Excuse me. So the return rate can be a little bit higher for FBA. Not through the roof, but over the years I've had more returns through FBA than through merchant fulfilled for sure. And so that can be a pain, because you sell it, make your money, and then now they got to return it, and so then they have to take the money back. Excuse me. So that's never fun, but that's just a part of business, doing business on FBA, and that's something you have to consider. And that really is a huge disadvantage if you go, big into, for instance, school books. So textbooks, higher priced books that a student might get, and then a month later might want to return after they've used it. Whatever, if you're selling a book for $80 and then they get a return in a month, it's not fun. But you want to deal with more volume, and so that doesn't really affect you. But anyway, that's something to consider. There is a higher return rate because of the convenience of Prime and all of the hassle-free marketing. Number 6, Amazon controls customer service. So it's an advantage and it's a disadvantage. Basically what that means is, it's great that they control customer service, but at the same time, you lose that control. So what that means is, if you're building a business, like building a brand, building a business, then you lose control of that customer service. So you're not able to set up your own customer service workflow or messaging or whatever it may be. That's just out of your control. So whatever Amazon does, you have to just go along with and hope that it's the best. So that's something to consider as well. Number 7, this is a big one, and veterans can attest to this, like myself and others, I'm sure, who are watching this right now, is these sudden and abrupt Amazon policy changes. Over the last, since 2014, this has happened probably like 10 times or more, where Amazon will, in midstream, suddenly just completely reverse 180 degrees on something, or they'll come up with some new policy out of left field, out of nowhere. They often will not, sometimes they will announce it and then just drop it, or rather, they will announce it and then it will happen, or they will just suddenly do it, and people, you'll start seeing in all these FBA Facebook forums or groups, people talking about, hey, did you notice that this thing started happening? And then someone else, yeah, I just noticed that. Hey, I just noticed that. Hey, I called customer service and they said this thing is now been implemented. This policy has been implemented. I didn't even know about it. So they did that with fees, fulfillment fees, back in, it was either 2017 or 2018. I can't remember exactly. Where Amazon fulfillment fees went up dramatically. I think it was 20-30% or so. And so typically a book you could buy for $1.50, a paperback, let's say, a fiction book even, and sell it for $10 prime FBA, and make $4.50. If it's a really lightweight book, $5. And now that book, you'd be lucky to make $1.50, and it's not really worth it to send it in because it was already a very competitive listing, and now the profit margin has gone down significantly. Anyway, that's just one example where it was like fee apocalypse is what people called it online, all the sellers, and you just gotta take it or leave it. So it can be a higher fee, it can be some other policy that changes. They've also implemented long-term storage fees, where it used to be only what do you call it? I can't remember, but the long-term storage fees did change significantly. Now I'm blanking on how it changed, but these are just examples of Amazon changing their policies suddenly, and sometimes giving you warning and sometimes not. For some reason, that's the way they like to do business, and they often seem to not favor the sellers over the customers. So that's something to consider. So those are the advantages and disadvantages of FBA. Those are some of the most important ones that I see. So now let me jump into merchant fulfilled or fulfilled by Amazon. And now advantages of, I'll just call it FBM for short, which is fulfilled by merchant or merchant fulfilled. And now the first advantage to it is your items can go live quicker. So, excuse me. What I essentially mean by that is you can walk into a thrift store in the morning, find 10 books, right, let's say, for sale on Amazon, come home, open up Amazon website, go into Seller Central, it's called, go into Seller Central, go to their listing. Let's just say you're doing it, right? You don't have a third-party lister like Exceller List or Inventory Lab or anything like that, and you go in there, scan list. Anyway, I can't remember the other ones, but one of those. You go in there, type in the ISBN, do whatever you have to do. If you have a barcode scanner, you immediately scan the book in, drop in the price, drop in the condition notes, the category, your SKU. There's a couple things. There's like 5 things you need to do. You hit, submit, go live, whatever the button says. And then it gives you a message that says the item should go live within 15 minutes. Often it goes live within like a minute or two. And guess what? Once it goes live, it could sell. It could sell immediately. I've had that happen where I post an item on merchant fulfilled on Amazon and it sells within like, an hour or so. Versus, so you could list like 10 items if you have 100 items, whatever it is. You can list them right there and they're all live right away. Versus you get enough together for a shipment. So you got to get enough. You don't want to send 10 books typically. I would say try to go between like 30 to 50 books at one in any given shipment. I would try to get together at least 30 or 40. Get like a medium-sized box, depending on how big the books are. If these are huge textbooks, it's different. But if they're smaller, medium-sized books, you can get probably 30 or 40 together to stay under the 50 pounds. But you have to list them. So you get all those. Let's say you get all those in one day at a thrift store. Then you have to go and list them, put stickers on them. You don't have to put stickers on Filled by Merchant, right? And then you have to box them up, send them to UPS, take them to UPS, and then it'll take anywhere from like, I don't know, Even if it's super close like me, it could take 3 or 4 days for them to go live, or it could usually takes like a week. So that's a big advantage to Fulfilled by Merchant is items can go live much quicker, which means that you can see sales quicker. That's a big advantage. It's really nice too, because when I find items that are merchant fulfilled that make more sense for merchant fulfilled than for FBA, I'm like, oh, I can just list this right away. Maybe it'll sell. It doesn't all the time, but it can. Number 2, it's free to start. What I mean by that is with FBA, you have to pay inbound shipping cost. Now, with both merchant fulfilled and with FBA, you've got to pay for sourcing the books. Of course, you can't, unless you've got books sitting in your house, unless people are giving you books, unless somehow you're getting books for free, which is possible. People give away books for free. I know I get books donated to me. So that's a possibility, but assuming that you're not doing that, you're just going out there to a thrift store, which is like usually the first step, or a garage sale, and you spent 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks on books, you already have to spend that money. But aside from that, with merchant fulfilled, you just list it, and when it sells, Amazon takes their cut and they give you the rest of the money. You don't have to pay inbound shipping cost up front, and you don't have to pay any storage fees. Now, storage fees don't kick in until you actually have inventory that's been there for a month, but at least the inbound shipping cost you will have to pay for. So that's something to consider. It's there's no money up front aside from paying for your inventory. It's a simpler listing process. So like I told you, you take a book, type in the ISBN, it pops up, you select it, and you put in the things you need to put in: the SKU, condition notes, the category, that it's a book, the price, of course, and then I'm forgetting something else. But basically that's it. You don't need to put a photo. There's a stock photo on there. You don't need to worry. This is an eBay. Unless it's some super high priced item. That's another topic. You don't really have to do that. And then you hit submit and it's done. That's it. With FBA, which I guess I could have put under disadvantage, is essentially you list it and then it goes into a shipment, and then you have to go to the shipment, and then you have to print out the stickers. You have to put the stickers on it, and then you have to go through and you have to get the weight of it and the dimension. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. It's not difficult. It doesn't take an engineering degree to do it. It's pretty simple once you learn it. But it is simpler to list for merchant fulfilled. Definitely, it's an easier process. Number 4. More control over your inventory. So essentially what that means is it's still in your possession. So if you have it stored in your garage, in your office, in your hallway, in your living room, even in a storage unit, you control that inventory. You control where it is, how it's organized, whether it's going to get creased if it's books, whether it's going to fall. You control it. It's under your control. When you relinquish that control to Amazon, like I said, things can get lost or damaged. It's part of doing business, but something to consider. Some people don't like to relinquish that control. They like to be in control at all times. They like to keep it within their possession. So you do control your inventory with merchant fulfilled. What I mean by making money before spending it, it's similar to free to start. So essentially, you do have to spend money on sourcing, but you don't have to spend money on storage fees or inbound shipping. So because there's no guarantee by sending in 50 books that you'll sell very many through FBA or through merchant fulfilled, but at least with merchant fulfilled, you're not spending any more money while you're waiting for them to sell. So that's the thing. You have to spend money for inbound shipping, and then let's say it takes a month or two before you start seeing some sales, which is not good. You need to get better at sourcing, but that's a possibility, and you still have to be paying money. I've seen that. People are like, I've sent in 100 books. I've only sold 3. It's been 2 months. What's going on? Well, you're not sending in the right books. But that person has been paying money, right? They spent the money on the UPS shipment. They possibly had to pay a monthly storage fee already. But with merchant fulfilled, all you have to do is pay for the item, the books, and then you just wait for them to sell, because the account is free on Amazon, the seller account. Number 6 advantage, control over customer service. So what this means is For a lot of people that want to start a business on Amazon, they want to have control of their customer service. So they want to have the messaging. They want to deal with people when they have complaints, and you relinquish that control to Amazon. Well, a lot of people think that's actually amazing, and there's all these people that have been trained by Amazon and phone reps and other customer service representatives and people that deal with that whole process and have all those systems in place. Some people prefer to control it themselves. So with Merchant Fulfilled, you have control over that. You can deal with your messaging and your response to people if any issues arise, like wanting a refund, like an item being damaged, that type of thing. You can phrase things the way you want to and control that. All right, so now we're going to go to some Merchant Fulfilled disadvantages. And number one, responsible for storage and organization, not organizations, and logistics. So essentially, it's pretty straightforward, but essentially that means, come over here, that means that you have to store everything. So it's awesome that you can list things immediately, but if you're going to have a significant inventory, and let's say, I don't mean like a few dozen, I mean if you're going to have hundreds of books, 400, 500, 800 books, think about how many books fit on like a shelf behind me here, a large 5 or 6 shelf bookcase. How many can you fit in just one bookcase? So think about that and the amount of space it takes to store and the organization. So not only do you have to store the items, you have to be able to find them once they sell relatively quickly, so that you can then turn around and ship them out. This is similar to eBay, which we're not talking about today, but eBay is the same thing. You have to be able to store and ship your own items. Right, but we're talking about storage. So anyway, so you have to have some sort of system. This happens often with new resellers on Amazon that are doing Merchant Fulfilled. Is they start getting a taste for the sales, and it's exciting and it's awesome, and you start making money, you start seeing sales, and you're like, wow, this could be good, and so you start ramping it up. But you soon realize that it starts taking over your house or your garage or wherever you're storing your items, and not only is it taking a lot of space, but you're realizing, well, how do I organize them? Do I do it alphabetically by author? Do I do it by the colors? Or do I apply tickets on them so that they're this row, this shelf, this row, etc. The bigger you get, there's ticketing systems you can use with different third-party softwares. So it gets to be a little bit more complicated the bigger you get. When you're small and you only have 100 items, pretty simple. But when you have 500, 800, 1,000 items, for instance, a guy that I met a few weeks ago who picked up Gaylord's boxes and pallets from me does Merchant Fulfilled primarily, and he has over 5,000 books. He does books in his house and in his garage, up to the ceiling basically. So, he doesn't have a storage unit. He doesn't have a warehouse. It's all out of his house, which is fine if you can convince your spouse to go along for the ride with you. But just consider that. So you're responsible for that. Number two, you're responsible for shipping, of course, which if you start selling a lot can become a full-time or a big time-consuming process. So the more you have to ship, the less you can source, the less you can list. So that's why people, as they get bigger, if they want to stay small, it's fine. You can handle it on your own. But as you get bigger, like the guy said that I met, reseller that bought the Gaylords and pallets, said, yeah, I have my daughter do the shipping. She goes and picks the items and sticks them in an envelope, and prints out the labels, and I guess puts it all together and then goes to the warehouse or to the post office. So you end up having to decide, is it just going to be you doing it or not? But you're responsible. You have to do that. You're the one dealing with logistics. So you got to find the item and ship it. Number three, more time spent on business logistics versus sourcing. So that's what I mean. Unless you hire somebody to help you with shipping and or listing, a lot more time is going to be your amount of time that you're able to spend on sourcing, which is a lot more with FBA, starts to shrink. Initially, a lot of, this much time on sourcing, this much time on listing and shipping, but the bigger your inventory gets, the amount of time you spend on sourcing starts to go down, because you've got to fulfill orders. You've got to pluck the orders out. You got to find the orders, and you got to ship them, and then you have to go to the post office unless you set up for the post office to pick up items from you. There's all different ways to deal with this, but that time does start to shrink the bigger that you grow your inventory. And there are ways to combat that, but that's something to consider. Number 4, lower sales conversion rate in general versus FBA. Generally, when there's FBA offers on a listing, buyers will a lot of times just buy the prime offer over the merchant fulfilled offer. This, of course, is not the case all the time, because there wouldn't be lots and lots of fulfilled by merchant sellers if this was the case that they weren't selling. They are selling, but generally you have to have a bit of a bigger inventory if you want to sell on the same level as prime. Whereas with prime, you don't need a massive inventory to sell a lot of books. I've had as many as 2,700 items in my FBA inventory. That was years ago. Now I have about 800 and something, but I sell books every single day, but I have about 300 in merchant fulfilled, and I do not sell items every single day. If I had 800, I don't even know if I would sell every day, but I'd be pretty close. But my point is that you tend to have a bigger inventory because the sales conversion rate is a bit lower with merchant fulfilled, generally speaking. During these quarantine times, that's changed a little bit. Prices for merchant fulfilled did go up a bit to where prime was, but now they're starting to go back down for various reasons. But generally speaking, merchant fulfilled has a lower conversion rate. Number 5, seller feedback can be more negative just because of what do you call it? Because you're handling the the customer service. So what that means is Amazon has all this hassle-free this, hassle-free that, free returns, but you having to handle it, sometimes there can be more negative feedback than with FBA. And also with FBA, you're able to, Amazon often, if the person complains about the shipping process, Amazon takes responsibility for that. If the customer leaves a negative feedback, then Amazon will wipe that away, often if it has to do with the item not getting there on time. Whereas they won't do that if it's a fulfilled by merchant item. So there we go. Those are the advantages and disadvantages of both. And so what is my recommendation if you're a newer seller? Well, I mean, my recommendation for beginners is FBA. Now, some veterans will say, no, start with merchant fulfilled because for the reasons that I said, right? Because you don't have to put out more money. You can control it a little better, that type of thing. FBA is a little more involved, a little more potentially has a longer learning curve because of the whole shipping process and everything else involved. However, I think if you learn that from the beginning, take a couple months to learn it, get good at it, streamline your listing and shipping process, that I think that it makes more sense. It makes more sense to do that, and you don't have to hassle as a beginner. You don't have to hassle with storing your items or shipping them and having to buy. That's another thing I didn't mention is shipping supplies. I should have put that as a disadvantage for merchant fulfilled. For merchant fulfilled is you have to purchase shipping supplies. So there is a little bit of a cost. It's not that much, but you do have to buy some padded envelopes. You have to buy, shipping tape and that type of packing tape, that type of stuff. So there is that's something I forgot to mention. I should have put that in there. And with FBA, you essentially have to buy you have to come across some boxes, buy some boxes, some shipping boxes, and ship the items in. But I do recommend FBA. When I started in 2014, I found out about reselling books, and I couldn't believe you could actually make money reselling books on Amazon. And so I started doing that and sending in items and learning the process, FBA process, and getting better at sourcing. And it made a lot of sense for me. It was very exciting because I could just build my inventory and I wouldn't have to deal with any logistics, any of the storage, any of the shipping, customer service. It was all dealt with by Amazon. So that's why I recommend doing FBA. I'm going to look at some of the comments here and see what we can add to it. But yeah, I would say that if you're watching this in the future and you're newer, that I recommend starting FBA. If you have questions for me, I can help you with that. I can definitely answer some questions based on the experience I have. Brian said, I hope you'll continue to do the live show, Flippin' Live, even after the pandemic is over. Well, it doesn't look like it's going to be over anytime soon, but I'll probably, speaking of that, I'll probably, to be honest, it's hard to do it every day. It really is. I do enjoy it, but you know, it's another thing to do on top of everything else. And I do like it. I like especially when you guys participate in the chat, but I'll probably do like once a week or something like that once I stop doing it daily. Brian asked, do you use an automated program to ask for feedback? I do not. Pat, when I first started, I didn't have automated removals set up. Over a year later, I set that up, but the removals weren't retroactive, so I had a Polaroid camera. Right? Yeah. So if you want to have automatic removals, definitely do that. Oh yeah. War Machine. He says stranded inventory is so confusing because the title is missing. Yeah, stranded inventory is weird. Sometimes that'll happen if you're new. It's something called stranded inventory, which is there's some issue. A lot of times there's an issue with your listing, and sometimes it makes no sense. This is the issue about FBA. Merchant fulfilled is much more straightforward, but FBA can be confusing. And then the item has to be disposed of or changed, and it can be very confusing. I have so much stuff in Amazon warehouses that will probably never sell, that probably had a bad image or a bad listing. I need to fix these up. Changing prices doesn't seem to help me much. Okay, yeah. Well, try to do those fixes. If those don't work, then just get rid of the item and keep moving, I would say. Tom is here. JD brings up a good idea of let you know your criteria or recommendations for items for using FBA, FBM, or eBay, single item, or a lot. Include different media types here. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I'll see if I can maybe, because this week is kind of Amazon, so maybe, yeah, you know, what is the difference between, that's a tough one because there's so many different criteria, but that's a good idea of what's the difference, or what's the criteria for selling FBA versus filled by a merchant. And if you're watching this in the future and you're a newbie, ideally you'll do FBA and fulfilled by merchant both, but initially start with one, get comfortable with it, and then move into the other, because you want to always diversify. So brings up a good point. I think FBM is better if you're starting with a limited budget. If you have the money, you can do FBA. Yeah, I agree. To a certain degree, I agree with that. If you're very limited, if you only have $100-200 a month to put into it, maybe it makes more sense to do merchant to get your feet wet, and then try FBA. Once you get used to merchant, you might not want to go to FBA, but then if you're an FBA, it might seem weird to do merchant. So it depends on which one you start. Because when you're used to not shipping individual items and doing FBA and having Amazon handle it, and then you start doing some merchant fulfilled, it's very strange. It was strange for me when I started doing merchant fulfilled, and then when I started doing eBay, it was really weird because I had to list or store and ship everything. Now I'm used to it, but yeah, it's a bit of a it's something you have to get used to. That's for sure. Uh, he says you've always done it. Yeah, I've never the volume books I felt I needed to. I mean, I get it. Because of the storage fees and everything, you might want to do a bigger volume to do FBA, but it's so convenient. Trust me, once you have several hundred items and you keep on sending more into FBA, it's very addictive. Don't have to hassle with shipping, storing, or customer service. It's very nice to have it running in the background. I can't stress that enough. But I understand. I totally get it. Because there are people that go from eBay to trying an FBA and they're like, what is this weird thing? I don't understand. I don't like losing control of my inventory. I don't understand that these items just disappear and suddenly they start selling and I make money. Well, that's the idea. It's FBA is a partially passive income or passive business, because once you ship those items away, you're essentially done with them. Minimal work in Seller Central on repricing and disposing of items. And you can systematize all of that if you want to. There could almost be an episode on strain inventory. Yeah. I do. Pat says, hello, Pat. I do CDs and DVDs fulfilled by merchant. I would love to do books, FBM as well, but Canada post rates doesn't really work. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with other countries and how that works. Hector says FBM also gives you more control over items, especially if you have bad items that aren't selling. Oh, do you mean in terms of getting rid of them? Yeah, right. Well, that's the other thing is that's why it's weird for people that do merchant fulfilled or eBay, is that stranded inventory, lost or damaged items. It is weird. It is that sense of loss of control, which it truly is, and feeling not helpless, but feeling like, well, what am I going to do if they can't find it? Amazon has lost an entire box of items for me. It was like a month and a half or something. It disappeared. It showed up at the warehouse. It was delivered to the warehouse, and then it wasn't checked in. And I called Amazon. I said, hey, this item box has not been, it's been received but not been checked in. They said, give it 30 days and then call us back. I called back and they said, okay, we're going to do research or whatever. And then they miraculously found it. I don't know, somebody had hid it in a corner or something. And then they scanned everything in and it went live and I started selling the items. Things started selling. So it happens, and it's frustrating because you spend the time to source, to list, to ship it, slap stickers on it, everything, prepare it properly, and then it just disappears into the void, right? So I get it. It's weird. It's a good question. Hector asks, what is the minimum price you can list something on FBA to make money? It depends. Like everything else, it depends. So if it's a book, okay, let's take a CD. CDs, okay, here's the thing. It depends on the item. Books are different than CDs. CDs I love because they're lightweight and small. So a single disc CD I can list for $9.99 and still make, I think, like $4 and change. I can list it for $8.99 and make $3 and change. Now, I tend to like to stay to $9.99 for a single disc CD. Now, when it comes to a book, it depends, because books come in all shapes and sizes. So if it's a small paperback, if it's a paperback book under £1, I'd probably try to stay, like I said, it depends on how much it weighs. But if it's under £1, it's probably try to stay at the lowest, the $10 to $12 range, probably closer to like 15. Like I said before, a $10 under £1 book used to make like $4 to $5 a few years ago, but now it might be $1 to $2. So it depends on what you want to make. If you're willing to make $2 on a book, send it in. But the problem with that is there's not much room space there. If the price tanks or goes down a little bit, even $1, it takes 50% of your profit away. So that's why I say probably try to get at least $5 profit on a book or an item if you're going to send it in FBA. But everyone's different. I used to have a minimum. It also depends on how much. I was going to say I used to have a minimum profit of $3, and I still kind of like 3 to 5 is my range. But it depends how much I paid for the book or the item, and how quickly it looks like it's going to sell. So, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to wrap it up, play the song, and get out of here. But I appreciate everybody that's been here live, and anybody that watches this in the future. Thank you for watching.
Flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live. We're gonna strive. We're here to learn and gonna earn. Flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin'
So
live.
this has been day 24 of Flippin' Live. So we're approaching 4 days away from 4 weeks or a month, right? So about a week away from an actual full month here. We're going live for a while. Started doing it because of the quarantine. I thought a lot of people are at home. Slowly, people will still go back to work. Those of us that do other things, have a job or have a different career, and just do this on the side. Thank you, Hector. I appreciate it. Tomorrow we'll be on again, so definitely come back. Anyway, so we're going for as long as generally people are locked down. We'll see how long that goes, and then I appreciate you guys watching. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe as well. I do have plans for future pre-edited, pre-recorded videos that will be happening soon. But for now, most of my videos will be the live versions. And this week we're focusing on Amazon. So tomorrow will be another topic about reselling books and other media on Amazon. Thank you for tuning in. And keep booking, guys. Like I always say, have a great day. Hope you have strong sales. Hope you're able to list. Hope you're able to source any one of those 3 or all of them. And I will see you tomorrow. Stay safe, guys. Stay safe. Have a great day. Take care.